Myself on mute. Hi, Jeremy. It's Megan.
Hey Megan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good,
I
good,
just
good.
made you the co-host.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Megan, were you able to email the invitation to Heather and Mason?
I wasn't, but when I see them in the attendees, I'll promote them to panelists. Or if I notice multiple Jeremys logging in, I'll ask everybody to rename. Or if you start seeing emails that people can't get in, I can email them too.
Okay,
Oh,
sounds
I'm
good.
so
I
jealous
did
of you guys sitting outside.
I did not, Megan, I did not send it to Heather and Mason.
Okay.
So let me do that right now. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, let me see if I can get into Zoom and get them added real fast.
That sounds wonderful.
Okay, so we're doing. Okay. Okay, they should have just gotten it right now. Oh, and I see 2 attendees.
Do you want me to let them in?
Oh, I just got them.
Okay, excellent.
And I'm all set up tech-wise, so whenever you're ready to begin, let me know.
All right, sounds great. Welcome, everyone. This will start off our May meeting of the Energy and Climate Team. Thank you, everybody, for being here, both team members as well as guests and presenters. I'd like to go around the virtual room to start off with and give a chance for everybody to introduce themselves so that I know a number of us know each other, but some of us do not, and just want to welcome everybody. So I'll go ahead and I'll just talk a little bit about my background or what I do on a daily basis, and just ask everybody to take a minute or two to explain their role and what they do on a daily basis. So my name is Jeremy Flesch. I'm the vice chair of the Energy and Climate Team. Chris Rowe is the chairperson of our team, and he is in Oregon, specifically, I believe, on the Oregon coast right now. So we were thinking that he might be able to join for part of this meeting. I don't see him yet. Megan, I don't know if you see him in the waiting room, but I suspect that he is out having a wonderful time.
I don't see him.
Okay, sounds good. I've served with the Energy and Climate Team for a couple of years now. What I do on a daily basis is kind of the interaction of 3 different things. 1 being data analysis and metrics, 2 being student assessment data. So I work with assessment data of students from all over the country, from kindergarten through grade 12, working for Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. And then number 3, I work in that position. I do a lot of how the data looks and how it's presented to the general public. So kind of the intersection of data and metrics and presenting that out in a understandable format to the public. So now I'll just go around the room and I'll kind of go based upon the screen that I have. I'll just go from left to right and ask Trevor to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone, especially the new folks. Uh, Appreciate your involvement. My personal role as far as my job, I guess, the job is I'm a financial advisor. I focus more on sustainable investing and ESG. So in my work life, it's also a passion. But serving on the board here and what drives me is just leaving a future that I can be proud of for my children and have them experience some of the things that I was blessed to be able to experience in the Western United States as a child myself. And I grew up in oil and gas country, so it's something that I'm very familiar with as far as kind of the both sides of the spectrum of um, a lot of the issues that do arise and come up along our pathway to achieving sustainable energy. So
Excellent. Thank you, Trevor. Virgil, would you like to go next?
Hi, I'm Virgil Jones. I'm one of the youth members. So this just happened several months ago, but there's 4 of us. Grace is missing today. But I'm an 8th grader, and I just decided that I wanted to get more involved in the climate, and this seemed like a really great opportunity. And it has been. So, yeah.
Good. Virgil, where do you go to school?
I go to CS Porter. So I would be at school today, but I just got I'm a close contact, so I'm quarantining.
Okay. It's nice to be able to be outside while you're quarantining. That's good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Lee, do you want to go next?
Sure, thanks, Jeremy. My name is Lee Ratterman. I'm the new energy and climate specialist for the city of Missoula. So I'm the new Chase Jones. I'm super excited to be here. It's just my 4th day on the job, so don't ask me too many questions yet. But I come to the city. I've been working for the past year at Home Resource as a zero waste specialist. And before that, I was in Boulder County, Colorado for almost a decade working in environmental sustainability and local government. So very excited. I'm digging through all of the long plans dealing with zero waste and energy and climate and all those sorts of things and trying to come up with a action plan with Charlotte. But super excited to be here and part of this group. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. It's good to have you here today, Lee, and it's great to have you on board with the city. And we look forward to working together to dramatically reduce carbon emissions in Missoula. And hopefully that will be contagious for all of Montana and even surrounding states and communities. So welcome. Amber, do you want to go next?
Sure. I think I know. Do I know everyone on this call? I think I do. I'm Amber Sherrill. I am a city council person for Ward 4 in Missoula. I'm in my 2nd year of that. I am the Parks and Conservation Chair for City Council. And so I am also part of this committee. And what I feel like I do on a daily basis is sit in this exact chair and look at a computer screen. Hopefully that's going to change soon. I'm really tired of Zoom, but I'm still happy to see all your faces, of course. So yeah, and my background is in conservation. I was with Five Valleys for many years and lots of different things. So that's who I am.
Excellent. Thank you, Amber. Brian, do you want to go next? Brian, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, I've been having some technical difficulties. My headset's not working.
No problem.
Yeah, my name is Brian Kerns, University of Montana, utility engineer. Been on a team for a number of years and involved with a lot of sustainable projects here on campus, energy projects for sure, that type of thing. And let me just tell the group, I'm going to have to jump off of this at 1 o'clock for another meeting. So I apologize for that in advance.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Charlotte, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. My name is Charlotte Pasick. I am the city's Energy Conservation Program Coordinator. I started with the city back in this past August, and I am from Spokane, where I've spent the majority of my professional career in energy management and sustainability for a local and a now global company.
Excellent. Good to have you here. Heather, do you want to go next?
My name is Heather McMillan, and I am the Project Development Director at Homeward. We're a local nonprofit. We work in developing, preserving all things affordable when it comes to homes and housing Montanans. We work statewide. We're a private 501c3. And we also, the organization also teaches first-time homebuyer education and financial education as well. And so we're pretty well versed in a lot of things. I'm excited to talk to you guys today. I've been with the organization 19 years, which is going to give me a little bit of either street cred or show my age. But what I am is also a recovering architect. I practiced formally out of school. I went to Montana State, born and raised in the Gallatin Valley, multi-generation, moved to Missoula. I'm the black sheep in the family. But I say I'm a recovering architect, and I use my powers for good because at the work at Homeward, I get to actually influence the way we develop and where we build and how we build. And that was why I ended up there. I didn't know back in the day that even nonprofits existed. I was full train going for architecture, and we kept trying to apply for Homeward jobs because they built things sustainably and it was a community and mission fit. And I just ended up applying, and my career ended up here. So I'm glad to be here and super intrigued about talking today because you sparked some of the stuff that I haven't talked about in a long time with the work at Homeward and why I work here. So I'm looking forward to talking in more detail.
Excellent. Thank you for being Heather. We look forward to hearing what you have to say here in just a little bit. Ellis, do you want to go next?
I'm Ellis Walker Kelleher. I'm a freshman at Hellgate High School and a youth team member, obviously. Full-time student, and I got engaged in climate efforts in the past few years. So when this opportunity came up, just a great learning opportunity, and very glad for this opportunity. Fifth time saying opportunity in a sentence. Okay. And I too, like Brian, will have to leave early. I think about half an hour early for a track meet. So sorry about that in advance.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ellis. Aviv, do you want to go next?
Yeah, my name is Aviv Gushio. I'm one of the youth team members. I'm a freshman at Sentinel High School. And I kind of like Ellis, I guess, just wanted to get involved these past few years. Went to a few climate marches. Just wanted to help make our world a better place and last longer and be healthy. So.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Grace is not able to be with us today. She is a senior at Hellgate High School. She is taking one of her final exams that she was not able to get out of. So that's where she is at. We talked earlier about Chris Rowe. He's in Oregon and may be able to jump on a little bit later. Megan, can you go ahead and introduce yourself as you were critical to all of this happening?
No. This is Chris.
Oh, there's Chris. I'll let Chris talk.
Oh, Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm on the phone.
Okay, excellent. Good to hear your voice.
Sorry for cutting you off there. This is Chris Rowe, and I'm on a little vacation. We're driving back from the Oregon coast to Portland. I've been the chair now for a couple of years, and thankfully Jeremy's there to help when I'm on vacation. But I'm just going to mostly sit here and listen. And I think we've got some great speakers today, and we're gonna be learning a lot. And so I appreciate everybody being there. So with that, I'm gonna mute myself again and let you proceed.
Sounds great. Thank you, Chris. It's great to have you on the phone, and we look forward to being able to see your face next month.
All right.
Megan, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Megan. I work for the city clerk's office, and I'm the staff member for the energy and climate team. I kind of help with all of the behind the scenes things. So just get in touch if you ever need any help.
Thank you, Megan, for making this happen. We also will have Mason Dow will be joining us from Climate Smart Missoula here in half an hour or so, and he'll have a presentation, but we'll let him introduce himself when he arrives. Megan, since we've just gone through and done introductions, do we need to do roll call in addition to that? Or what we've done, is that qualify as roll call?
You know, Jeremy, I'm not entirely sure. Amber, could you answer that?
I think we should probably just do a quick roll call of the committee.
Okay,
Unless, yeah.
Megan, do you want to do that?
I can. I have it pulled up.
Thank you.
Chris Rowe.
Present.
Jeremy.
Present.
Trevor.
Here.
Michael. Brian.
Here.
Scott. David. Virgil.
Here.
Ellis.
Ellis, you were on mute, I think.
Here.
Great, thank you. Grace. Aviv.
Here.
And Amber.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. The first item number 2 on our agenda, is approval of the minutes from our April 8th meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments or adjustments to those minutes? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting?
Or a motion to approve them.
Trevor made a motion. Megan, do we need a second on that?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so as far as the committee members, any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes from April 8th, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. All right, the minutes are approved. Item 3.1, the emissions inventory update, and also item 3.2, the energy performance contracting with McKinstry. I'm going to turn it over to Lee and Charlotte. Go ahead and handle that however you want to.
Great. I'll go ahead and take one for the team here. So I'll start with the greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So there's 2 of them, municipal and community. Municipal falls with the fiscal year, so the July 1st of the year you're working on into the following year. So this particular one is from July 1st of 2020 through 6/30 of 2021. For the fiscal 21, and then the fiscal 20 is for the prior year. The community inventories fall on the calendar year that it's working on. Due to Chase's departure, we did backburner the community inventory, so there was a little bit more time to make sure we had somebody else in place to make sure we could communicate well with our stakeholders and all that. But the municipal inventory is very close to being finished. All the base work is all done. It's just kind of fine tuning some of the details and investigating a couple little pieces. From right now, the biggest contributor that we're noticing is solid waste, which is a little bit of a surprise, but this is also the first time the city is going to be reporting solid waste in the inventory. So there are some call outs that we do notice right away, such as the accuracy of the fullness of the dumpsters during collection. If there's missing data points, maybe from Garden City, in terms of recording actual weights when different city departments come to dispose of their compostable materials. For right now, until there's any adjustments towards those items, we do notice that Parks and Rec is the biggest contributor. We also notice that there are a handful of accounts that appeared to warrant right sizing, but we are going to be looking at that more in the future to look at all the city accounts to see what can be right sized. The emissions breakout currently follows as solid waste is number one at 33%, buildings and facilities 22%, the vehicle fleet at 21%, water and wastewater treatment facilities at 15%, streetlights and traffic signals 6%, and the employee commute has dropped down to around 3%. Do note on the employee commutes, when I created the survey and pushed it out to the employees, there at the time there was 881 employees employed for that fiscal year. This includes full-time, part-time, interns, all the jazz. And of that, a little over around 150 or so folks replied to that survey. I did design it to adjust for COVID. So I do believe the official time period for some of the city operations to switch more to remote work was about April 1st. So I did separate that survey out to capture some of that data and the change. And from prior years, the baseline year, the employee commute contributed to 9% of the inventory. 2015's interim goal was 8.6. 2017's goal was 7.7. And then for this upcoming inventory, it had dropped down to 3.24. So largely contributed to the COVID and remote work that has switched over. Of the municipal inventory, it is registering as the highest inventory in terms of greenhouse gas emissions since the baseline. The largest set of contributors to this from the last inventory for 2017 were the acquisition of Mountain Water, which is now Missoula Water, the acquisition of the new police station at Catlin and the remodel for it, as well as solid waste finally being reported for the first time. So these were all expected as values to go up. Just wasn't expecting as high of a change, but there was going to be a lot of analysis on any of outliers that we can address right away and whatnot from there. The big also call out with that is 83 plus new accounts got added to the inventory due to those acquisitions. And so that definitely would attribute to that increase in emissions. As I said before, the community inventory was backburnered for a little bit, but we'll be starting that back up. Some data has already been collected for a couple of the sectors, but we have a few more that still need to be gathered. Any questions on that particular piece right there before I move on to the energy performance contract?
Charlotte, will the community inventory be for calendar year 2020?
Yes. No, sorry. That one I believe is marked for calendar year 2019, but I'll double check, but I think it's 2019 data for that. Sorry, I should probably say the fiscal year for FY20 is July 1st of 2019 through June 30th of 2020. It's a little bit of shift right there. Yeah.
Okay.
So should be 2019 data for that.
Okay. And when the data comes out, will there also be a comparison, I'm assuming, to the prior year? So
yes.
So it makes sense as far as why some numbers went up, or in this
Absolutely.
case, some numbers went down faster than expected.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what we're looking at right now to make sure that we do capture all these different changes that have happened and why the interim goals that were placed for the 2015 reduction of 10%, 2017's reduction of 30%, and reduction by 2020 at 50%, why none of those goals were met for at least the 2017 and 2020. So those will be addressed in that report as well. I should also say when we do get ready for that report to go out, it will go to internal reviews first. So hopefully this team will be taking a look at it, and a couple other stakeholders for the county and other organizations in Missoula will take a look before we do the final report and go from there.
Excellent.
Same thing, yeah, same process with the community inventory once it's ready to go.
Charlotte, I just wanted to jump in real quick and kind of reiterate what you said about all the different changes, and that while the emissions are going to be much higher this year than we've seen in previous years, we're kind of looking at this as our new baseline because of the inclusions. Like, I don't know why they never included solid waste before, and then the acquisitions of Missoula Water, but we're kind of at a point where we think that things are not going to change so drastically in the near future. And so I think this year will also serve as a new baseline for going forward. So it might be kind of an appropriate time to start thinking about how we reduce from where we're at today.
Very good call out. Yeah, and we were just chatting about that, and I agree that this would be a good time to kind of have a new baseline set for our future activities. So pretty excited for that and what we're going to be doing with those particular sectors. Now, as for the energy performance contract with McKinstry, so the final signatures were back in February, and we're doing a multiple phase rollout. Right now we're on phase 1, and it's slotted from February start through September of this year. The project's going to be focusing on a few sections, data, benchmarking, any goal settings that we have, and then any energy utility forecasting and trends for future. Big highlights for the energy performance contract is utility data collection. There are about 29 parks and a good handful of other locations like fire stations, police stations, and whatnot, currents, that are going to be included in this phase 1. They're the biggest call outs so far. And then they'll roll on in the other phases to address other buildings and other parks if need be. So the data acquisition portion, that's being split up. I took part in all of the locations except for the parks. The Parks Department will handle their locations for the utility data, but we're gathering energy data and the water data as well. And so energy data, for at least my portion of it, has been submitted to McKinstry for review, and the water data is still in collection. Missoula Water's website's been down for a little bit for their bill imaging, and they're having some system issues for some of their other accounts, so I can't quite get all of it yet. Part of that kind of scope project I had mentioned, we have the data piece. We're going to have the benchmarking as well, and a lot of that's going to be inventorying. They're doing investment grade audits to go through the buildings. They have just scheduled those, and they're starting to go through and take inventory of everything in the building. That's your fixtures, bulbs, how many toilets there are, like anything and everything in the building that can be addressed. And going forward, the mindset was to keep in mind the goal of carbon neutrality by 2025. And so they really dialed this project to accommodate our needs for that. So the objectives with that is just minimum energy efficiency standards, above minimum step or stretch standards, energy use intensity, net zero energy, clean renewable energy on site installation and procurements. And when it comes to kind of forecasting and trends, they're looking at net and virtual metering, coordinated demand response, distributed and decentralized utilities, generation grids or storage, vehicle to grid technology and implementation, growth in eco districts. So those are kind of the big high levels with those projects. I do believe the site visits are going to be wrapping up in the next couple months, and next stages of their findings will be released in the coming months, which is going to be really exciting to see what they do find from those audits. And hopefully by then we'll have a better update for you folks on what our next steps are going to be and what McKinstry recommends.
Charlotte, is there a process by which priorities will be set as far as which buildings or which utilities go first from a McKinstry standpoint?
Yeah, and good question. When they designed these phase rollouts, the city and McKinstry already had some ideas on what locations they wanted to be looking at first, such as like Kerns and Splash. They already knew certain locations were going to be fine opportunities. And after this, they'll give us a priority list of which buildings or parks they feel are ones that we can target right away. And we'll get a little bit better idea of what can be feasible going forward. May it be, retrofits, any new installations or anything like that going forward.
Excellent, thank you.
Jeremy, from my understanding too, internally will also help, this group will help set priorities, city council members, staff will help with that, we'll take the information that we get from McKinstry and then kind of further drill down into how we actually implement those things.
Sounds great. That would be excellent to be a part of that process and decision-making plan.
So,
Any questions for Lee and Charlotte? Okay, sounds good. Good. The item 3.3 on the agenda has to do with the 100% clean electricity MOU. As you will recall, we made comments to Missoula City and Missoula County regarding that 100% clean electricity MOU. I don't have a specific update from Diana Mineta at this time, but I do expect that we'll have an update for our next meeting. The next item, 3.4 on the youth team member renewals. Megan has reached out to all of the youth team members to gauge their interest in continuing on for another year. I don't have any specific updates on that. Megan, do you want to share any of that, or would it be appropriate to hold off until June?
I believe we've collectively heard from everyone, you and me, Jeremy. Youth, do you feel like I'd be putting you on the spot to have you chime in?
I don't think so, no.
Awesome. Well, do y'all want to share where you stand?
Sure. Aviv, do you want to go first?
Sure, I am very happy to continue. I think this is awesome and I'm really enjoying it.
Fabulous. Virgil, do you want to go next?
Sure, yeah. Yes, I would love to keep doing this. It's been a really good experience, and I think it'll be really great to go for another year. So
Awesome. Ellis, do you want to go next?
I too would love to continue this experience. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Awesome. I love all of your energy. It is contagious and it's great to see. I spoke with Grace last week regarding her willingness to continue or desire to continue. She is a senior in high school and her situation is a little bit different as next year, involves a lot of changes. I think she is undetermined at this point in time as far as what next year looks like. So I think we'll need to wait until June or July to have a better idea exactly as far as that goes. But I think all 4 of our youth team members have been excellent additions to the team. So this is great. The next item, actually, any questions on that? Okay. The 4th item on our agenda is public comment on the items not listed on the agenda. So anybody that is watching via YouTube or that would like to join that is a member of the public, you should now be able to see the contact information for dialing in. I will also read off part of this. So if you're calling in or would like to call in, you can call the telephone number 1-253-215-8782. The webinar ID for this meeting is 878-9453-1602. And the password is 416092. Megan and I will do our best to keep our eyes open and accept anybody that would like to come into the meeting to make comment or provide any feedback. I don't see any comment or anybody joining the meeting at this point in time. So I'm going to proceed on. And if anybody does come in here in the next few minutes, certainly we will adjust and take their public comment. Item number 5 on the agenda is action items. We have no action items today, but there are a number of non-action items. And our first presenter today is Heather McMillan with Homeward. And Heather, I think I may have mispronounced your last name there. I apologize.
That's all right. It's only one L, so smiling, but that's all right.
I will turn it over to you, and we are very excited to hear more about Homeward and your process for affordable housing and using energy in a way that is including conservation and as efficient as possible. So thank you for being here, Heather.
Absolutely. What I'll confess right now is that I took some notes. I'm not usually a speaker that takes notes, but when Jeremy prepped me a little bit for the meeting, I knew I needed to put some bumpers on because this is an area in which I think we could really get in and have conversation, and it could last, for hours. So my intention today is to give you a little history of Homeward and how we approach sustainability, how it links to homes people can afford, and then basically kind of the work we've done and the work we're currently doing, because our environment has changed quite a bit over the 19 years I've been with Homeward, but the 26 years Homeward's been around and working the way we do. So bear with me, and then hopefully we'll have a little time for questions. Homeward has been around 26 years, and the reason we were formed is that we were working with WORD, Women Opportunity Resource Development, and my founding executive director figured out that housing was fundamental. If you don't have a safe home, you don't have a safe anything. There's no security. And so Homeward was an offshoot of WORD, and we then became our own 501c3 because we entered the world of developing, and that's a very high risk for an organization. And we became our own 501c3. And the reason Homeward started working the way we did and developing the way we did is that we knew there was a need for homes people could afford, but it needed to be done in the right way. And so we utilize federal programs, both IRS and HUD programs, for the majority of our work. We use a program called the Low Income Housing Tax Credit, and then also city and state home funds and CDBG funds and other myriad of other funding sources, so that all have federal strings. And so the work that originated at Homeward and continues to this day is that we really look at the connections of sustainability connected to, I'm going to say affordable housing, but we don't say that anymore. And I'm an old dog being taught a new trick. It's homes people can afford is less triggering and less NIMBYism. Not in my backyard is what NIMBYism is. And when people hear affordable housing, they're triggered, and it's those people and it's not us. And we're all part of the community and all part of the context of the community, and all income ranges matter. And so I may waffle between the two, but we've been working on that messaging for the last couple of years because it's important in our policy work. So Homeward saw the connections between, back in the day, green buildings, sustainability, however you want to couch it. We know that energy efficiency means that our residents pay less of their utility bill, and they may be able to afford food or medical or something else they can't afford in their equation. Healthy indoor air quality is a big deal. I mean, a lot of people have health issues. It doesn't matter what money you make, but you also have people that aren't able to necessarily pay for health insurance or may have some underlying issues. And so indoor air quality was of the most importance. Where we build matters. We take on projects where we build the core of cities, core of towns. We do not do greenfield development on purpose because location, not only is the common sense connection that that's where you should absolutely develop. It's also important because that's where people are close to jobs, and then they don't have to drive. They can take the bus, they can walk, they can get to their work or their grocery store or their schools because they live within the community and not an outstretch of developing, in outside the city limits or in more of a greenfield development style. Really important. Also, just as a side note, say I'm equally passionate about open space. Sometimes we're put at odds with the affordable housing world and open space, and saying that they don't go together. And in our belief is that they do. If we don't have that open space, we don't have an economy, and we also don't have our sanity. That's why I remain in Montana, is that open space is critical. And once it's built on, it goes away. And so Homeward's development practices are intended to be more complicated because we redevelop brownfield sites. We go close to infrastructure and build where we should from a kind of an overall footprint standpoint. Durability matters because we commit with all of our funding sources that we're going to maintain these for 46 years and longer. And that's our intent, is to own. A lot of developers may use these programs and flip them at the end, so to speak, but we intend on building the right way up front the first time, and we want it to last. And so by building things out of durable products, then our operations are sustainable and we can charge less rent and keep the equation. I'll speak probably from time to time about the equation, because development's an equation and there's toggles that move within that, but you have your upfront sources and uses that need to match your expenses, and then the sources to pay for it, but then also operating is a big deal. And I think that in the world of sustainability, that's, it's not just about the upfront costs, it's about the long-term costs and how you have to look at the overall equation. Buying local, we try to make sure that we're buying things that we can get in Montana or close, and that's impossible to do everything, but in a lot of our funding sources don't let you do that. You have to have an open free bid, but we try, we get creative and we put things in our specs, and the way that we advocate for development pieces are, like I said, sometimes at odds with funding sources, but it's the right way to do it. So those are that's where Homeward started developing the way we started developing. Those connections for our residents are very important to build the right way at the location, all the costs. So what we did early on, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a stroll through history with Homeward, is that back in the day, we were fighting for energy efficiency. The building code didn't cover it. The international building code and the energy codes didn't have as high of thresholds as we do now in Montana. We're actually quite lucky. That was some of the things that was kind of a really obvious direct connection early in our work, is that, you build a good envelope, you use a simple system. And if you have PVs, that's great, but you need to have something that produces less energy. And we had a lot of higher thresholds when it came to energy efficiency. And now that work is easier because, like I like to say in the building industry, it's like moving a barge. I don't care if you've done it 100 years, it doesn't mean you're doing it the right way. And when you shift that barge, it takes a while. And so kind of over the course of the last 20 years, we've seen that change, which is great. So energy efficiency is less of a battle. You don't have to argue for it. Some of our early work back before construction prices were insane, and materials were a problem, as they are currently. We could craft our projects, and our cost per unit was higher, but we argued and advocated for that because we were building with durable. But then we had the luxury of being able to exclude all PVC from a project, where we got to do, and this was before PEX existed. But we used copper and a few other options because we didn't like the carbon footprint and the health implications of how PVC was produced. So those were early things that we got to play with, and then we lost the luxury as we moved forward because things just started costing more. But on the good news side, more things are readily available. So we were able to kind of take our lessons learned and craft our model as we go. Our base building energy is fine. We can use PEX. There's a lot of great products that have a better environmental footprint. But things we learned early on, we had a project in Billings that we built, and we had ground source heat pumps. And apparently the leading cutting edge system, the pumps associated with that, the filters all had to be ordered from France. You couldn't buy them at Ace Hardware, which, if you want to talk about a footprint impact. So now we know to talk to our engineers and our architects and make sure that we can craft the maintenance side of things. And, what are their experiences with systems or material choices so that they're not considered disposable, because there's nothing worse than construction materials being thought of as disposable. You need to build it the right way the first time. And so we've played with that throughout the years and made sure that, as things like marmoleum became more readily available, and linoleum and other products that the industry shifted, we took advantage of it, but we also needed to make sure we were very careful about what we spec'd and if it was too far ahead of the curve. That happened several times in our history. But basically, we negated it down to and worked through the fact that when you build a building, there's 3 simple steps. Your best bang for the buck is to build a building with a good envelope. make the walls the right way, the windows the right way, that's your best bang for the buck, because it doesn't matter what you have for a system. You can light a candle in a good building for enough heat, right? So, and that's a little bit jokingly, but build the envelope, it's going to cost less to operate. Then systems are very important. We, at this point in our development stage, I mean, I'm an architect, I have another architect and an engineer on our team. So I like to say we're a little bit high maintenance, but we really make our designers think about what mechanical systems go best with what structural systems, and how you can use, you're moving water less or power less, and what's the best building equation as we build. We think that envelope and the coordination of major building systems is really important, and a great way to, affect your footprint, but also costs. Costs are nothing but a challenge at this point. My three things that I did want to say is building envelope, then systems. And if you have PVs, photovoltaics, solar, hot water, or electric, that's just icing on the cake. Ironically, the funding sources, I think those sexy PVs are great things to pay for, and nobody really understands how sexy a really good wall construction is. So we kind of fight that battle and get to do a little bit of everything because of that. So right now, our current work and the way we develop, and we work all around Montana, and so different jurisdictions are at different levels of understanding. Missoula is easy. You guys, this committee exists. We can make these arguments as to why it's important to build a certain way, but we have these longer conversations. And what I say when I say this in other communities is that I speak both sides of the divide. Housing in general, homes, people having safe, affordable roofs over their head. In Missoula, it may be social justice, but in Billings or in Bozeman, it's economic development, because the money that we put into housing, over $100 million over the last couple of decades, is money spent in Montana that let that electrician buy his groceries. And so, it's all part of the infrastructure and the way we talk about things. But a lot of what's important to us now is policy work. And back in the day, I didn't think that was important, but it is. We've worked really hard because our financial, the people that we get some of our funding sources from, and we also use commercial lending a lot too, there's limits. It's a finite resource. They want to put a cost cap on our per unit development. And we fight with that. We want to build the right way, and it may cost a little more. Even if we have outside resources, sometimes they put limitations that are too difficult on us. So we fought for years on that, testified at the qualified allocation plan for our state agency's allocation of the low-income housing tax credits, said if you're going to allocate those very important resources, they need to be allocated with rules associated with them that you have to build the right way. And so energy and other sustainable practices have been in there for the last over 10, probably 15 years because we worked on that policy, and others are now seeing the benefits of that. Some of the other pieces that we work on, and I spent the last few years most importantly dealing with, is looking at infrastructure. Land use mapping is very important because keeping open space and planning your growth is absolutely critical. As much as we all love living here, others are moving here, and we can't stop that. So it's not if you're going to grow, it is you are going to grow, and how you grow is important. So land use mapping is really important. I participated with the county on that, as well as and with some of you on this call. And then that translated into the zoning code update. I did the cities years ago, but we're currently in the middle of the county zoning update that hasn't been updated for 70 years. But now we're getting an update, and that's where the tooth is. When we talk about how we develop and incentive to get people to do the right thing, you need some carrots and you need some sticks. You can't incentivize enough. Some people just will never do this. And so in working with the zoning code, work creating different building types, not just 1 acre single family tract development in the county, but you can do townhomes, you can do other things. There's way to incentivize through those regulatory pieces to have more affordable homes created. And so those are a lot of the things that we're working on today. And we did this roadshow before COVID hit. We did a presentation at the housing conference with jurisdictions there were city officials, and there were leading city officials, leading state planners, and a few of us in the housing world. And we met at the housing conference, gave this presentation about us all working together and crafting these tools. And then we did it at the state planners conference, and we did it at the League of Cities as well, because everybody knows how important homes people can afford are right now, and how we can incentivize it, how we can put it into rulemaking. Those conversations are really active, and we'll continue to work on those pieces. I think what's important for this group to think about is that while we want to be able to do everything, even all the fundraising that we can do and all the ways we approach development, construction costs are just outrageous right now. It was challenging. Labor was challenging before COVID hit, but now you have labor and materials and the shortages. And so you have to make choices. And so we work really hard to prioritize. We've had to make really hard decisions that we don't like on recent developments. But I think this experience, and for us not to be able to develop the way we want to necessarily, and we try to have the least amount of impact on long-term operations as we can. And if we know there's going to be an impact, we say it out loud to our asset managers, and they plan capital needs to make sure that they're maintaining or, kind of resolving that through operations. A little more difficult than you would think. But I say all this because if we can't do it, why would anybody else do it? So I think the nugget here is that, how do you incentivize and how do you regulate to get people to do the right thing? I would say one thing that's really hopeful. I'll say the bad first, and then I'll go into the hopeful. Construction costs are up. The equity pricing on my tax credits in which we build our developments is in the toilet right now. And then also interest rates are going up. So when you look at the economic model for a development, one thing can be bad and you can overcome that, but everything is at odds. So I just think that's kind of the state of the world right now, and we'll recover from that at some point. But so it's just really challenging. And so, how can a market rate developer do that? What is giving me hope is that I've had more people call and ask what they can do, because the world that we're living in right now is, I kind of equate it to the Great Montana. It's like a gold rush. It's a land grab. A lot of you may even be impacted like this. People are coming into Montana, buying houses sight unseen for cash. It's been happening all year. We're a safe place, quote unquote, to live, and people really like living here. And so it's driving up costs of land. That's another piece of the equation that's challenging. It's taking all our housing stock out of, first-time homebuyers, Montanans, those pieces. So that's been super challenging. And I think before people thought it was a problem, or they may not have had it as a priority, the positive is I have random strangers calling and saying, hey, we see what's happening. We have a piece of land. We would like to do a development that is for Montanans, for, affordable, not $400,000 per house, affordable. And so kind of the work we're doing now, and our homebuyer educators get calls like this too, is that we're trying to help connect them with the land use planners in the county, so that they know what the future zoning will allow, the building types. Some of those pieces are really important to kind of help educate people wanting to do the right thing. And so while right now everything is kind of upended and in a challenging environment, I do think there is some hope around there. And there's a lot of us working on some creative options with both the city and the county. Currently, Homeward has 202 homes in the hopper with, we're partnering with Missoula Housing Authority and a private developer, Blue Line Development, and we're building, you maybe have seen some dirt turning finally, over on the Cooley site next to Burn Street Bistro. We own that city block where Skyview used to be, as well as part of the project is over by the detention center on some county-owned land. So that's a very complex project, and we've had to work closely with the city for the last year and a half, and the county, to get it to come to fruition. And we're this close to closing the whole financial package, but we did start turning dirt so that we could, keep our subs and our contractor and our fixed fees kind of maintained through the chaos of what's going on right now. So that's really exciting. That's going to be 72 workforce homes, family homes, larger bedroom unit type homes on Cooley. And then we'll have a permanent supportive component to the project where there's 100 workforce housing and 30 permanent supportive homes on Mullen, and there'll be a navigation center. And so those 30 permanent supportive homes are targeted to homeless and chronically homeless. It'll be one sliver of a solution that won't be ready for another 18 to 24 months, but it will help. And we've been in conversation with a lot of healthcare and the service providers, and we all need to work as a network to help address some of those issues. So that's what we have going on right now. We currently have projects in Whitefish and Livingston trying to finish construction, and have projects underway in several other communities and in partnership with other entities. And so hopefully that's a little bit of context of what we do and how we do it, and basically just the beginning of a conversation. I don't know if there's any questions, or we can get into some specifics about some of the current issues and overall issues. Jeremy, I'm not sure. I want to make sure I stayed in bounds on the time limits, but
Yeah.
I'd like to just open it up for a conversation.
Yeah. Heather, I think your information is really good, and I appreciate your focus on open space as well, because certainly open space and agricultural land and forested land certainly has a huge impact on carbon as well from the other end of the equation. And I appreciate your focus there. Can you talk a little bit about I guess the one question that I had is making sure that those homes remain affordable as, years from now. Can you just talk briefly and kind of give an example of that process to make sure that those homes are affordable 20 years from now?
Absolutely. The first program that I talked about, the low-income housing tax credit, that is primarily 95% of the time used for rental housing. And so when the Montana Board of Housing allocates credits to us, and then we use them, change it for money and build them, we have a deed restriction that's placed on the property. And that deed restriction is there for 46 years. And so even if we go away or this property is sold, and we've worked over time to make that requirement stay and stick. And so those projects are really easy to define. Some of the other work that's being done, if you've heard about a community land trust, we worked with North Missoula and specifically Trust Montana. What we do really well is large multifamily or even small multifamily, complex construction projects. We worked with Trust Montana and reminded ourselves how hard home ownership projects are. And we did a small homes project next to the food bank. It's on a triangle lot. It probably was more of the lot we picked. It was a brownfield. It had a ditch. The sewer and water were on the other side of the ditch. Like site access was a nightmare. But we worked with the food bank, and we did 6 small homes that we had recycled from the Bakken. I'm just not sure how we could have made it more complicated. But the point is, the reason that those are going to stay affordable is that Trust Montana owns the land now, and they will own that in perpetuity, and they will manage every time a home sells, it will be sold to another qualified buyer. There's deed restrictions on the parcels, on the houses associated with that project it will stay there. The affordability will stay in perpetuity. And that's the deed restrictions, that if something is sold, you just have to make sure that the rules and the tooth stay attached. And so that's another way to do it. Habitat, we're working with Habitat for Humanity right now. They have a wonderful model. Thank goodness they can do volunteer labor. But they have their executive director, Heather Hart, is really working with the other habitats around the state to develop in a way that is longer term affordable. The land trust is one option, but also different housing types are another creative way that they're looking. We're working on a project with them in East Missoula and consulting on using some specific city funds and for a down payment assistance associated with those homes. And so there's land trusts, there's single family homes can have deed restrictions on them. If we've had that caveat to that is if I've gotten a funding source that requires it, it's really easy to get that associated with title. But a lot of people are looking at models where it's not even a funding source that requires it, but they're willing to do that. We have some counterparts working in the county in a growth planned area that want to do a large subdivision, but they want to make sure that they can target Montanans and have them be a really reasonable price. And so the way they're approaching that, without giving kind of away all the details, is that, you know, construction costs are what they are, but what they're going to do is maximize the land use associated with the zoning that's coming up from the county to do density and different variety of housing types within the subdivision, and try to drive down some costs and have some market rate homes associated with it to kind of help offset. And so I'm really intrigued with how they're going to be able to target. You have to live in Montana to be able to purchase a home. There's some things that we dance with these rules with fair housing, but we all know it's not fair that people are buying houses left and right. And so there's a way to do this, and we're just trying to craft policy and walk that dance with fair housing to be able to do some of these things that are goals and a little outside the box. I don't know if that helps.
Excellent.
In the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Questions?
Heather, I had a question for you. You mentioned kind of earlier about some sustainability initiatives and how you had the opportunity to be more innovative before, but now as costs have gone up and materials markets have kind of caught up to sustainability, that you've not been quite able to do that. But I'm wondering if your team has mentioned or thought up of things that they wish they could do in terms of sustainability, but maybe they don't have the funding, or yeah, I'm just interested if there are things that we're missing out on that we could.
The soul crushing part for us is, you know, we had to, when we got our bids back on this large project, we had to value engineer $4 million out of the project from where our baseline was. And so Mason, who's going to be presenting next, we're working, it sounds small, but we're working with Climate Smart. They're working on some, what I would say, carrots. And if they have, I'll let Mason talk about that. There's a wish list of things that we want to add back in. It's mostly about building envelope and window types. And so they're not large chunks of money, hopefully, on a large project like this. If I make a $5 change on 202 homes, it just multiplies. And so we're really trying to beef that envelope back up. We want to be able to use, looking at doing a kind of a blown-in insulation system just of a higher quality versus kind of just the bare bones that we had to kind of value engineer out. And so I would say it's mostly around that. The systems are pretty limited. We're moderately happy with the system that we have. We wouldn't normally do the VTAC particular model. We had some issues. The other thing we learn as we develop is sometimes manufacturers say one thing and that's not what happens in reality. And so we thought we had a better option, and we had to kind of go back to a baseline system because we had problems on another project with the one that we did want to use. It was a better on paper footprint, but at the end of the day, the maintenance and the replacement and the long-term operating costs were a challenge. And so that's kind of where we're at. I mean, I'm kind of in the middle of it right now. We're still not closed, and we need to make some more hard decisions. But you know, we have to cut out landscaping and do a base allowance where, you know, there could have been more shade trees. There's, you know, just other things. I mean, I think when it comes down to it, quality of finishes, you know, we would like to do better flooring products, but we need to get something that's durable, but it might not have the best footprint. If you look at the overall equation, LVT is something that we know works when we have to cut the budget. It has a history, or it's not ideal, but I know the industry is working on a better product version of that. And so it's little things that add up over time that we're struggling with. So we've made a list, and if we can add things back in before products have to be ordered, we'll do a better job. And Mason and Amy at Climate Smart, they're working on some really progressive things that they may be able to find some resources on that social justice side that where we can buy things and put some things back in.
Awesome, thank you.
Excellent. Other questions for Heather? or feedback.
Hi, Heather. This is Michael Dorshorst. I'm
Michael.
also, hi, I've been on the board of Council Grove's low-income housing community for about 10 years now too. So just throwing it out there, if you guys need any help from our board, we'd be happy to work together with you in any way, even if it's just helping promote what goes on over at your facility. We'd be happy to do that.
That's great. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, that's been a long-term good project. So there's a lot of us working, we call it the village. So yeah, thank you for that.
Heather, you're right that property right over by the food bank, that triangle shaped property, I live very close to there. And I didn't know the details of it until, I've driven through or walked through, and it's a great small neighborhood. Honestly, I would love to live in there. It feels very community minded. It feels like you would have enough space, but yet know your neighbors and communicate. So it looks really good from what I've seen.
And I was a little too honest with you guys. I mean, it's a wonderful community, and the individuals that bought the homes are amazing. And they are their own community. They take care of each other. And Garden City, I mean, talk about a village. There's just not a lot of resources for homeownership out there. And every time you use one of the ones that are there, it creates unintended consequences on cost. And so we had these little houses from the Bakken that we bought at a discount from the guys that were going to ship them to Texas for the next oil field development, got those reduced, had to set them on foundations on the complicated site. But I mean, honestly, to have Trust Montana, to have the food bank being a priority friend and partner, Garden City Harvest did a very small garden area. That's kind of the break between the food bank and the homes, and the residents, the homeowners love it. And they are working in partnership. It was a really unique partnership. And so Home Resource donated materials, came over on a build day. I mean, everybody and their dog threw in on this. And yeah, it's a wonderful little community. So thanks. A lot of brain damage. We had to turn those homes were technically vehicles, and we had to decouple the title and make them houses so they could be put on the foundation. And there was a whole bunch of crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a wonderful little community, and all the brain damage given maybe helps us with our next project. Every time something is hard, you learn things. And I think that's probably our biggest strength, is that we know that we don't always do things the easiest way or the right way, and we will make mistakes, but as long as you own that and learn from it. I mean, I think that's why our approach to sustainability has evolved over time, is that it just has. We've learned and we've gone, and why it makes, those decisions are really important to have background in education, because it's not always face value when you're looking at something from like a carbon footprint standpoint or sustainable standpoint.
Sounds great. Excellent. One last call for questions and comments for Heather. All right. Thanks so much, Heather. This is all good information, and we certainly may want to follow up and have, as you mentioned, have a extended conversation in a future month. So
yeah, great. Thanks, guys.
We had two folks that joined while Heather was talking, and I want to give them a chance to introduce themselves, Michael and Mason. Michael, do you want to go first and just give us 1 or 2 minutes about your role and what you do on a daily basis?
Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate that. First, just I really want to talk about what a great addition to the team Jeremy has been. He's jumped in right from the beginning, coming down similar to myself, even before he was technically added to the board and was doing work down there. And he's been a great addition to the team, and I really appreciate the leadership role he's taken on. Thanks for that, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I've been with the energy and climate team since 2015, and run several projects through the team since then, and have really enjoyed being a part of it, and really enjoyed expanding not only the scope of what the team does, but in trying to impact areas that the team had been working hard to try and get to in previous years. And I hope that we can continue to make those efforts going forward. I'm actually a licensed sanitarian with the Missoula City County Health Department. And so I've been involved a lot with the housing issue in Missoula for tourist home licensing. I helped the city write the ordinance back in 2015, 2016 for that, for tourist homes. I added in the health department components to that, and then went to all the meetings. And there was a lot of discussion back then about how the future of adding the ability to have tourist homes anywhere in the city except heavy industrial, which was basically a flip-flop from what it was before, that it was going to drive up housing costs. I don't know if there's been studies about exactly the effects of tourist home on those housing costs, but I think just in general, the secret's out about Montana. So it was great to hear that information from Heather. But yeah, I really appreciated having the youth team members on here, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself, Jeremy.
Sounds great. Excellent. Thank you, Michael. And the agenda indicates that Amy Sillenberg would be here, but we're lucky enough to have Mason join us. Mason, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis. And I want to get the pronunciation of your last name correct. And feel free to, as you feel ready, go ahead and jump into your presentation about the Footprint Fund.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. So I'm Mason. I'm an associate with Climate Smart Missoula. Climate Smart, we do a little bit of everything, but my job in particular is working with Amy on our new Missoula Footprint Fund program, amongst other things, but this takes a lot of my time. So I'll launch into my presentation here. Let's see, I'm gonna do this and that, and okay. Did everybody get this screen? Is that
yes,
a yes?
I can see
okay.
your footprint.
Fantastic. Yeah. Oh, no. Present, wrong one. There we go. Okay. Come on, computer. But I guess while this is loading, a little more about me. I joined Climate Smart this last fall, and so I'm one of our newer additions to the Climate Smart Missoula team. But yeah, and as Heather mentioned, working with a few different stakeholders and partners on some different projects associated with the Footprint Fund now. So I'm having a lot of fun in this last year getting to learn more about the community. Okay. The Footprint Fund. So again, Mason, associate Climate Smart Missoula, and today I'll be presenting on the Missoula Footprint Fund, Climate Smart's new carbon offset initiative. So today I'll be talking about Footprint Fund's goals, our methods, where we fit in and challenges we've hit so far, and what we think might be next. So the goal of the Footprint Fund is to increase livability and equity, awareness of climate concerns, and achieve emissions reductions. Now, this is a goal. This isn't necessarily our writing of our, the mission statement of the Footprint Fund in full. It's kind of our goal with the Footprint Fund, crosses so many different boundaries for different efforts that Climate Smart tries to do. Some of them be awareness or community outreach or coalition building. But our Footprint Fund is kind of this step into, this sort of market space. But notably absent from kind of this goal are goals of, like quarterly growth or, high profit margins or anything like that. So, this is an offset program that we're trying to structure based off some of these different community programs that we've learned from a little bit differently than other offset programs that, might make headlines in the news or, sell their offsets to big corporations like Walmart or some of these other big offset buyers. So the Missoula Footprint Fund, we're trying to structure a little bit differently, and I'll talk about that moving forward. So our methods here. So we have two main sort of tracks on which the Footprint Fund takes on projects and generates and then sells carbon offsets. So this first track is our Bridge the Gap program, or what we're calling the Bridge the Gap program. And Bridge the Gap is basically where Climate Smart is attempting to serve as a broker of sort of the carbon offset sale between larger institutional buyers and developers. And so this photo on the left here is from a cornerstone project that we did with the Missoula Housing Authority in partnership with Clearwater Credit Union. And this project, the Cornerstone project, was kind of our proof of concept for what we're hoping Bridge the Gap can look like in the future. And so Bridge the Gap, this project in particular, was a big energy efficiency upgrade from these electric heat pump units, so the heating and cooling system, as some of those sort of different types of energy efficiency upgrades that Heather was alluding to. This is one that we used with this project. And then Clearwater Credit Union and Paul Herendeen and the team over there serving as the purchasers of carbon offsets. So this is kind of our one tract of the Footprint Fund. And the other one is this One Home at a Time program. And so this is a program where Climate Smart, in contrast with Bridge the Gap, is serving as a holder of carbon offset commodities as they are created. So our One Home at a Time program is a partnership with the Human Resource Council here in Missoula, who does low income weatherization and subsequent energy efficiency upgrades in partnership with and funds from Northwestern Energy, which comes from a pool of money from the state and a program from the state. So our One Home at a Time is kind of piggybacking on this program and trying to provide a source of funds via the sale of carbon offsets for the Human Resource Council to undertake energy efficiency and weatherization upgrades that they would not be allowed to do otherwise. So they have a sort of return floor that each upgrade needs to hit in order for it to be viable under their contract with Northwestern Energy for them to do. And these are things like weather stripping and sealant and girding around the lower portions of manufactured and mobile homes. But the Footprint Fund then allows, through the sale of carbon offsets, them to undertake projects that fall under that floor of return, which is just a positive floor. So we can undertake projects that fall under that. And this One Home at a Time is a program that utilizes the already existing structure of what the Human Resource Council does and all of their sort of protocols and mechanisms for undertaking projects, and just adds a little bit to their margin of the kind of projects that they can accept. So and notably, One Home at a Time here are sort of smaller carbon offsets, 1 metric ton sales that we are hoping to market more so to individuals or groups or perhaps very, small businesses. So not institutional investors like banks or people with very large facilities, but rather, individuals or families. And so the One Home at a Time, and I'll get into sort of a bit more of methodology here, definitely falls under more kind of our marketing outreach and awareness scheme for talking to community members about what it means to live a low carbon lifestyle, what it means to be aware of your carbon footprint and try to reduce it. And there's a lot of common critiques of carbon offsets and how they have the potential, if not structured in a sort of equitable way, have the ability to just allow for either individuals or whoever is purchasing the carbon offset to continue polluting. And so our big thing with all of our, both of our carbon offset tracks are acknowledging and trying to push the idea that carbon offsets are sort of a Band-Aid or a stopgap measure for emissions increases. So we're trying to be really cognizant of these critiques and design programs that have much more of a value add to the community that extends beyond just, the offsetting of an amount of emissions. So talking a little bit more about some of our methods for how we've tried to structure this program, all of this has come from a lot of different conversations that we've had with different local community-based carbon offset programs in different areas, most notably the Finger Lakes Fund up in upstate New York. That's a program we're trying to use as a model, but we still have a lot to learn and a lot to try to sort of iron out with the Footprint Fund. But in general, data collection and price setting, given that, there's so many different types of carbon offsets, but ours, deal specifically with energy efficiency upgrades and the act of, energy that isn't being consumed. In an ideal world, we have, fairly good baselines for making assumptions and trying to assume, how much energy savings are going to incur over the lifetime of a specific, piece of infrastructure, or Heather was mentioning a building envelope and things like that. And also, fortunately, there's long been good sort of measuring techniques for trying to estimate these things. And then kind of that second bullet point, carbon offsets have strict requirements. And so measurability, verifiability, additionality, permanence are all things that, we're really working hard to make sure our carbon offsets, when sold, meet
Mason,
all of those requirements. Yeah, Jeremy, please.
Can I ask you a quick question? What is the additionality?
Oh yeah, that's a really key piece to, go back there. Yes, bottom left. Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yes, so the concept of additionality is a really key piece to carbon offsets, and to make sure that they aren't just, a greenwashing effort or something like that. So additionality is the concept of, were it not for the additional resources that are provided through the purchase of a carbon offset, so that would be the funds, in our instance, used to purchase an energy efficiency upgrade for one home at a time. This could be something as simple as like a water heater wrap. And obviously for these potentially larger projects like the Cornerstone apartments, it's a multitude of energy and heating units. But were it not for those resources, those energy efficiency upgrades would not be made. So a really key piece. One of the lack of additionality is one of the main critiques that carbon offset programs sort of come under fire with. And so, if you are perhaps protecting a stand of trees or something like that and calling that a carbon offset, you have to be able to make a really compelling case as to, you were certain that that grove of trees was going to be potentially cut down and emissions incurred, and the preservation via these resources then equates to some dollar per metric ton, and you can make a really good case around that. So we rely on sort of this financing piece of additionality, which again has longstanding precedent and really good guidelines out there for questions you can ask and sort of thought processes that you can go through to try to ensure that that additionality is met. Does that kind of answer your question, or is there anything else?
That's
there?
wonderful.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And then, measurability, again, this is kind of a challenge we have, but like with all projects and all programs that deal in carbon offsets, there's always a little bit of sort of give and take with trying to do a project that is going to incur some sort of emission savings and then accounted for on the other end. But there's always give and take about you're trying to predict the future. And so that measurability piece is one of the harder ones to nail down. But fortunately for us, there's longstanding precedent for doing things like energy modeling and things like that. So we feel pretty solid about those things. Tracking and accounting of each offset. That's a one area of the Footprint Fund where we're really trying to expand our knowledge and really hone in our process for how we're as each offset is being created with the Human Resource Council, and each new energy efficiency upgrade is being installed, that creates a carbon offset. We want to track that same carbon offset over time. And when it's purchased, then we're retiring that offset on behalf of, the purchaser, and just having that process be really smooth and seamless, and so that nothing is getting lost in the fold. And then, that fourth bullet point there, marketing, that's kind of I'm a business major from UM, and it's kind of the piece of the footprint fund that I'm really excited to sink my teeth into, but we've only really dipped our toe into thus far. So we've had sort of a proof of concept of sale, and sort of a limited marketing strategy thus far for like who should be the individuals that we want to target carbon offset sales to. Who are people who we think could benefit from knowing more about their carbon footprint? Where can there be additional gain just by selling somebody a carbon offset? Can you encourage them through that conversation, through that process, to reduce their emissions in other places, or tell their friends about that? Or can there be a greater community piece via the sale of any carbon offset, as opposed to just, oh, you did this road trip or you took this flight and you want to offset your emissions? How can we get beyond that? What are the next steps that go sort of that expand that scope of what marketing in a sense could mean?
Mason,
and then please,
just wanted to jump in real quick. That's a super exciting to see, because when I think of the Missoula community, I think Missoula is ripe for exactly what you're talking about, and people embracing this type of a program. And so your background in marketing, I think, is going to help enormously in how do you thoughtfully push this information out and communicate with the Missoula community. Because I just feel like people are ripe and ready to jump on board when they have the right information, and when they have, when the time is right, so to speak. So I didn't mean to derail your conversation, but that makes good sense.
It's a really good point, and it's the part that we get really excited about. It's like we have a community clearly that espouses these ideas of reducing our emissions, being responsible with our resources that we do have, all of these sort of things. And a carbon offset program can supplement some of these things as we're trying to, reduce per capita emissions of, not everybody can afford an electric car yet, but if somebody's going on a long road trip and they want to pay more to offset perhaps that road trip or that flight, like where, but then admittedly, there's a tension there. Is it better to just encourage people to ride their bikes? There's a lot of nuance here for developing a kind of program that speaks to all of these things. And throughout this entire process, and with as much feedback as we can get from anybody, we're trying to be cognizant of those kind of tensions within that. So, and then, that last piece, so outreach, education, ancillary programs, we were talking, the marketing piece alluded to this a little bit, but one of the things we're trying to do through the Footprint Fund is, people have the question of how much carbon offsets should I purchase, is, a reasonable question for perhaps a small business or a nonprofit or even just a family to ask. And so we're trying to expand our greenhouse gas accounting abilities. So I've been doing some training on that and trying to develop a way for just small businesses or nonprofits. Thus far, we've done 2 churches to have a way to access, somebody who can help them understand the carbon footprint, on an annual basis or over time, or how it changes of their facilities, perhaps, including commuting, purchases, all that sort of stuff, the different scopes of emissions, what to do about it, where to make gains, what's the low-hanging fruit for reducing emissions, and how offsets play into that role. So that's a sort of a additional piece of this that we're trying to build in. And again, all of these are sort of things that we're piloting right now and figuring out where climate smart best fits, and where our skills are best used, where we can pass things off to other groups. But it's really exciting. And then that education piece kind of goes along with any of this carbon accounting that we can do for anybody else, is that, emissions should be kind of, or offsets should be kind of the last step in trying to talk when we talk about emissions and emissions reduction. They should be sort of the end of the line as we look at these sort of things with carbon and energy use. It should be sort of the end of that line. So that's another area where, again, we're still just ironing out exactly what it is we're trying to do, and what people who and the organizations that want to know more about this and want to engage with Climate Smart, what they need. All questions we're still working on answering. So and then kind of like where we fit and challenges that we've seen thus far. So as I was mentioning, and kind of as Heather was alluding to, there's a lot of different groups here in this community that are working on development of low carbon buildings and low resource intensive buildings. And we see sort of the Missoula Footprint Fund as it exists right now being a fairly small part of that equation. But with the potential to take on a bigger role as we continue to iron out these kinks. But right now, still ironing out all of our proof of concept, our ways in which we want the Footprint Fund to exist. And again, Heather was alluding to the potential for this large development that Homeward is undertaking. And we're trying to do another Bridge the Gap project. And so, getting together a convincing and attractive package of energy efficiency upgrades that could exist, and then going out and marketing them to some institutional investors in which we have prior relationships with, is kind of like this next stage of where our supply of carbon offsets could expand, or we could again kind of do something that brokers a direct sale. But it's nice to know that Climate Smart has a lot of flexibility in this area to wear different roles and or wear different hats in different roles. And Amy's relationship with the community and just her extensive Rolodex of all the people she's known from living here so long is definitely a big asset that we have in trying to figure out where the Footprint Fund can fit in this conversation around housing, equity, sustainability. So and challenges we've hit thus far, definitely the housing world is kind of in crisis right now. I think everyone on this call is fairly aware of that. And a lot of value engineering is occurring. Building is incredibly expensive and at the moment. And so the Footprint Fund is needed more than ever, but also a lot of energy efficiency upgrades are very expensive. Energy prices are still quite low. And so any project that we're hoping to undertake is met with a lot of hurdles. The Human Resource Council is finding that right now. They're also trying to sort of re-navigate their relationship and contracts. So the pipeline right now is a bit of perhaps a bit of a drip as opposed to a flood or anything like that in terms of generating new energy savings and thus new carbon offsets. But again, these are things we're just hoping to iron out with time. And so what's next and conversation and questions? We don't know. I think we're figuring it out. We have a lot of really good ideas, a lot of really solid existing relationships and partnerships. And we're, I think, just trying to take the Footprint Fund as it comes, but also, especially with sales, not trying to get out ahead of our skis or engage in the sale of carbon offsets that or emissions reductions that aren't going to actually happen. So we're just trying to take it easy and be measured and cognizant of the speed at which we're moving the Footprint Fund forward. So I think I'll stop it there. I think I hit all of the points that I was trying to hit, and we'll just open it up for questions and conversation.
Any questions?
Mason, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say it was a really great presentation, and I had a lot of questions as we went, and you just kept answering them, so that was good.
That's good to hear. I felt like I rambled a lot, so
no,
I appreciate you saying that.
No, I think you did a great job. And I just want to say that I'm really relieved to hear about the kind of philosophical view of the offsets, that it's kind of the last resort, but also a way to maybe bring people in to teach them about things. And so,
Yeah.
And I really love the idea about helping people calculate their carbon footprint as a way to engage as well. So I think you guys are doing awesome. I'm excited to see this grow.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lee. Yeah, the sort of looking consistently for where there's more value to be gained from a carbon offset than just the offsetting some emissions is kind of the constant question that we're trying to ask and answer with any project that we're looking at. And so, yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because it's definitely a thing that's constantly on our mind and conversations, we're having internally. So.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, I just thought that was a super great presentation. I found the website to be very cool. I was just tinkering around, calculating the footprint or whatever. So very cool thing that you all are doing. So thank you.
Great. Yeah. Actually, one thing I was going to do is like drop the Missoula Footprint Fund website in the chat. Also, an area under construction. So if you go back on it in a week and things have changed, please know that that's to be anticipated. But is there a chat with this?
I'm not seeing a chat, Mason.
I also don't see a chat.
Um,
Well, if you just Google MissoulaFootprintFund.org, that's us. So
right. And I'm sure you can get to it through climatesmartmissoula.org as well.
Yeah, it's on our homepage. So
Yeah. I feel like it's so apropos that Heather and Mason, that you're both here today. I feel like there's so many linkings between the two of you and between your organizations. I'm sure Chris Rowe planned this out, precisely, but maybe not exactly, but I'm sure he was thinking of that. So
I do have to say that I just now feel bad because we owe Mason information, because we've been spending time on that value engineering exercise to answer Lee's question. We still haven't defined all the things we're compromising on. So it's a big full circle piece, but we really appreciate it. Mason, that was a great description of what you guys are doing, and it should help not just us, but a lot of other projects.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've talked a fair amount as a committee about is how do we motivate people, either with a carrot or a stick, whether that's a developer or an individual homeowner, to build a home, to build a residence, to build an office building that is as energy efficient as possible. And you both kind of touched on that in one way or another. And it's a tough nut to crack, because, if it's going to cost an extra $20,000 or an extra $5,000 up front, where does that money come from, and how can, recognizing that money may be paid back over the course of many years, it's still that upfront cost, and how to, do that through Homeward, through Climate Smart Missoula, through zoning codes, through stretch building codes, all of that is a very complicated circle, as you're indicating, Heather. So, additional questions? All right. Thank you so much, Mason. Excellent.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have continued conversations in the coming months. So
Thanks, Mason.
The next item on our agenda is the legislative update review from the legislature that just ended. And I wanted to touch on a couple of different things. Michael and I spent a huge amount of time reviewing different pieces of legislation, talking about them, strategizing about how we can be most effective and most efficient in either supporting or opposing many of those pieces of legislation, specifically focused on carbon. And there were definitely a lot more bills to oppose than there were to support. The one bill that I wanted to just touch on real quick was a bill that we thought was a good bill and we were supporting initially. This is House Bill 448. This was written by MREA, Montana Renewable Energy Association. And initially it was a good bill that supported renewable energy, that was going to increase the maximum size of a solar energy installation, was going to create jobs related to solar construction, as far as solar installers and things like that. It was supported by Democrats and Republicans alike. I went back last night and I checked on the Montana legislature website. It was on March 1st, this bill was a good bill and it passed the House on a vote of 86-13. Within a short time after that, it was hijacked by anti-solar interests and went the exact opposite direction in a way that would hurt solar installers, that would hurt renewable energy, and that would add all kinds of onerous checks and regulations and a whole bunch of extra work that was not necessary. In the end, House Bill 448 died in committee on April 29th, and we as a committee were a part of that by contacting legislators, by emailing, phone calls, by talking with neighbors and friends and coworkers and things like that. So a very good thing that House Bill 448 died. You know, obviously we would have liked to have seen it pass in its original form, which was a good form and would have been very good for solar interests in Montana. But luckily, after it was hijacked, it did die in the Montana legislature. The next bill that I wanted to just touch on, and if anybody has any thoughts or wants to jump in, please don't hesitate to do so. The next bill that I wanted to touch on was Senate Bill 379. You received lots of files and emails from me about this $1 billion bailout coal strip bill. This was a bill that had lots of problems with, and was just astounding to see that it got as far as it did. It would have potentially cost Northwestern Energy customers in excess of $1 billion. Northwestern Energy would have been able to continue to operate Colstrip risk-free, and was just a scary bill all the way around. This bill was killed at times, and then it was resurrected, and then it showed up in other bills. For example, it showed up in House Bill 695. This is a bill that the four youth team members, Virgil, Ellis, Grace, and Aviv, wrote a letter to the editor that was published online at Missoulian.com. And it may have been published other places as well. I'm not exactly sure on that, but kudos to Virgil, Ellis, Aviv, and Grace for your excellent work on that. And kudos on communicating with legislators and emailing, phone calls, Facebook, Instagram, all of the different methods that were undertaken. Great work. Hopefully everybody has seen that letter to the editor that was published in the Missoulian. Virgil or Aviv or Ellis, do you guys want to jump in or say anything there?
Well, it felt really good to be part of a group that where we got to do something. Like, I know we're not voting members, it just felt great to feel like we were making a change, and I'm really proud of that letter. We spent a lot of time on it, and I'm glad we got it published somewhere. So, yeah.
2 big thumbs up or 20 big thumbs up. I totally agree. Totally agree. Aviv or Ellis, do you want to say anything?
I mean, Virgil pretty much said it. It felt really good. It just felt like we were doing something. And I'm glad that it got published.
Ditto, agreed. Very cool. And I've actually got to run, so Great seeing you all. Thank you for all of these presentations and knowledge. And yeah, hope you have a great one. Yeah, I'll see you next
Thanks,
time.
Ellis. There was one other bill that we talked about, Senate Bill 260. We referred to that as the takings bill. That also was voted down and failed in the Montana legislature. Another good thing. All of this to say there was also a whole bunch of bad pieces of legislation that were passed through the legislature and that were have been signed by the governor. All types of things that prohibit local governments from addressing climate change. There was a bill to phase out styrofoam in food-related businesses. There are bills to repeal Montana's renewable energy standard and gut the Montana renewable energy standards. There are bills that create additional barriers for renewable energy projects. Mason mentioned as far as having an electric car or an electric SUV. There's a bill that dramatically increased the fees associated with having an electric car or truck or SUV. All of those were very troubling and not the direction that we were hoping that the legislature would go. But all of that to say, the three bills that we worked very hard on, and we, along with lots of other people around the state, were successful in blocking. So that is all excellent news. One of the things that we'd like to do in the coming days and weeks is kind of to identify the impact that we had. So in the coming days, I will send out an email to everyone that essentially asks you to just try to specify how many phone calls you made or how many emails you sent to legislators, as well as how much communication you had with neighbors or friends and family, coworkers, things like that. We recognize that it's impossible to get a precise number. We're just trying to get a general ballpark of, I emailed 3 legislators, or I emailed 15 legislators, or I made, 1 phone call, or I made 7 phone calls. We're just going to try to gather that information. Again, general numbers, recognizing that, we'll never know exactly which phone call or exactly which email made the difference of one legislator voting yes or voting no, but to have an idea of the overall scope that we had. I think that'd be really good data for us to have. And it also allows us to kind of strategize as the next legislature session comes in 2 years. So look for that email here in the coming days, probably next week, and just try to capture how many emails or phone calls or tweets or Facebook messages you made regarding these bills that impact carbon in Montana. Michael, do you want to add anything? You were super involved with the legislature and have such great expertise. I know it was kind of a dizzying time period, but do you want to provide us with any words of wisdom or thoughts?
I wish I had some balm for our souls right now, but I don't think I do. It was a bloodbath, no matter which way you look, for the environment and for people. But a couple of things I did want to talk about. I'm sorry I lost Mason there, but about the carbon offsets, and maybe you can, or I know you can help me on one part of this, Jeremy, but Mason was talking about how part of their offset costs were going to be funded by that NWE project. And I was thinking that funding was going to dry up because of one of those bills that made it through. And I don't remember which bill that was. I think it was in the 400s, but I'm not positive. And then the other thing I was wondering is if anybody had left on those, because for Lee, I don't know if you, I hadn't said this in my introduction, but one of my hired, or one of my university degree work was in climate change studies. Actually, I have a minor in that, and I was very involved and had a community project where I was reaching out to the community to inform them on climate change and what it means and how to do it. But at that time, Keegan Eisenstadt was about the only game in town for carbon offsets. And I think his company, if I remember, it was called Blue Skies. But does anybody know if Climate Change or Climate Smart with Mason kind of took that over from Keegan, or if Keegan's still around? Because I know, as Mason pointed out, if you're banking on carbon offsets to help change the situation, you kind of already lost. Carbon offsets are like the weapon of last resort. But I just wondered if there was some post-mortem, if Keegan's outfit isn't going anymore for carbon offsets, was there a post-mortem done on why it didn't work and how they can avoid some of the problems of that in the future? And I apologize, I missed Mason on that, but yeah, thanks. And to the youth team members, fantastic job. And Virgil, when you said that you're not a voting member, I want you to not feel defeatist about that or take that as a negative, because even though you guys don't vote, you are influence peddlers in the extreme. So if you guys have issues that really fire you up, definitely tell us about them and get us fired up about them too, because you guys can make that happen. You can make us vote a specific way. So thanks. And sorry if I'm throwing us off track, but thanks, Jeremy.
Lee, did you want to respond, or Lee or Charlotte? Any thoughts on Michael's comment?
Yeah, I'm pretty new to Missoula. I've just been here for 2 years now, so I don't really have the historical knowledge. But I did quickly Google it while you were talking, Michael, and I didn't see that it's an existing organization anymore, so.
Okay, so Michael, we might, I can reach out to Mason and see if they have done a postmortem as you described, which I agree would be helpful to not step in the same landmines that were stepped in before.
Yeah, that'd be great, Jeremy. Thank you very much for taking that on. It's been about 10 years. So because this discussion in Montana of carbon offsets has been going on for about 20 years now. So.
Yeah. Michael, the other thing, the Senate bill, I think you might be referring to Senate Bill 237. That was eliminating Northwestern Energy's obligation to pay $2.5 million for low income and energy efficiency programs. It may have been that one, or it may have been a different bill.
No, I think that was it. Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions, comments, thoughts on the state legislative update? I know there are a lot of organizations that are doing a review of the legislature, not only from a carbon perspective, but from a wildlife perspective. I know MEIC has a webinar or a meeting at 5 o'clock today, where they're reviewing what happened and how to move forward, and where legal actions will come up, and where where other approaches will be taken. But there's lots of good information out there. So the next item on our agenda is team member comments. Any thoughts, any comments from the team?
I just say great job, everyone, and the youth members especially. It brought a smile when I did see the article. Actually, I get a lot of news just on my news feed through my phone, and seeing it on there is something that obviously the algorithms know that I am interested in those things, but it's still pretty cool. So I appreciate all of your guys' hard work, and that's awesome.
Awesome indeed. Lee, welcome. We're certainly excited to have you, here working with our committee, and we are certainly excited to work with you in Charlotte in the coming months as we all we need all hands on deck, and this is going to be a mad dash to get this work done in the next 3.5 to 4 years. So
Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here.
excellent. Any last comments before we adjourn? All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Megan, for keeping us all together. And we will meet again in a month.
Thanks, guys. Great work,
Thanks,
Jeremy.
Jeremy.
Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.